Last night, I almost didn't wake up. I felt my heart stutter in the darkness. 3 beats, then nothing, then a gasp, and in that moment, suspended somewhere between here and whatever comes next, I saw my entire life flash before me. But here's what no one tells you about those moments. It wasn't the achievements I saw. It wasn't the money I made or the awards I won. It wasn't even the big milestones everyone spends their whole lives chasing. No, what I saw were faces, moments, fragments of ordinary days that I had completely forgotten. I saw my mother's hands kneading bread on a Sunday morning in 1952. I saw my daughter's first wobbly steps across a kitchen floor that no longer exists. I saw the way my wife's hair caught the light one random Tuesday afternoon, an afternoon I never even registered as important. And I wept, not because I was dying, but because I finally understood something that took me 80 years to learn. Something so simple, so obvious, and yet so brutally hidden from us until it's almost too late. I'm 80 years old now. I've buried my parents. I've buried my wife. I've buried friends who promised we'd grow old together. Friends who never got the chance. I've sat in hospitals watching machines breathe for people who once danced at my wedding. I've cleaned out houses that used to echo with laughter and found only silence and dust. And through all of it, I kept asking the same question. What's the point? What actually matters? When everything gets stripped away, when the house sells, when the career ends, when the phone stops ringing, what remains? Today, I'm going to tell you. But I need you to understand something first. This isn't advice. Advice is cheap. Everyone's got advice. This is a confession. A confession from a man who wasted decades chasing the wrong things. A man who hurt people he loved because he was too proud to be soft. A man who finally found the truth buried in the wreckage of his own life. And the truth is terrifying, because once you see it, you can't unsee it. Once you understand what actually matters, every moment you've wasted will haunt you. But here's the thing about ghosts. They're not always trying to scare you. Sometimes they're trying to save you. So if you're younger than me, if you've still got time, I'm begging you to listen, not because I want pity, not because I need validation, but because someone should have told me this when I was 25, when I was 40, when I was 60. No one did. And I paid for that silence with decades of my life. The world tells you that aging is about loss, about decline, about fading into irrelevance while the young and vibrant rush past you. That's a lie. Aging is about clarity. It's about standing at the top of a mountain you spend your whole life climbing and finally, being able to see the path you took, all the wrong turns, all the wasted detours, all the times you thought you knew where you were going but were completely, hopelessly lost. At 80, you see everything, and what you see will break your heart, but it will also set you free. I remember being 30 and thinking I had life figured out. I had a job that paid well. I had a family. I had a house with a mortgage that felt like progress. I thought I was building something permanent. I thought the people around me would always be there. I thought time moved slowly. I was wrong about all of it. Time doesn't move slowly. It moves like water through your fingers. You can't hold it. You can't save it. You can only watch it slip away while you stand there, paralyzed by the illusion that you've got plenty left. You don't. None of us do. And the people you love, the ones sitting across from you at dinner tonight, the ones you'll call tomorrow or next week, or when things slow down, they're not permanent either. They're borrowed, every single one of them. I learned this lesson the hardest way possible. I learned it standing over caskets. I learned it reading obituaries for people younger than me. I learned it in the deafening silence of an empty house at 3 a.m. But the lesson itself? The lesson isn't about death. It's about what death teaches a living. And what death taught me? Well, that's what I need to tell you next. Because the hard truth I promised you, the one truth that 80 years of living burned into my soul, it's not what you think. It's darker, stranger, more beautiful than anything I could have imagined. And it starts with the biggest mistake I ever made. The biggest mistake I ever made wasn't a single moment. It was a pattern, a habit, a way of living that poisoned every good thing I ever touched. And the worst part? I didn't even know I was doing it. For decades, I lived like I was rehearsing for a play that would start later. Like everything I was doing, the work, the stress, the sacrifice, was just preparation for the real life that was coming. I'll be happy when I get the promotion. I'll relax when the kids are grown. I'll enjoy life when I retire. When. I spent 50 years waiting for a moment that didn't exist. And while I waited, life was happening all around me. Beautiful, irreplaceable life. Slipping through my fingers like sand while I stared at the horizon. My wife used to ask me to dance in the kitchen. Random evenings. No special occasion. Just the radio playing and her hand extended toward me with that smile. That smile that could still make my heart skip even after 30 years. You know what I said? Not now. I'm tired. Maybe later. I've got to finish this. Always later. Always tomorrow. Always some future moment when I'd have time for the small, silly, beautiful things. She stopped asking eventually. I didn't even notice. And now she's gone. 3 years in the ground. And I would give everything I own, every dollar, every possession, every remaining breath, for one more dance in that kitchen. But the kitchen is quiet now. The radio plays to no one. And I sit here with a truth that burns like acid in my chest. I was given 1,000 chances at joy, 1,000 invitations to be present, 1,000 moments that would have cost me nothing except my attention. And I declined them all. For what? For work that didn't matter. For stress about problems I can't even remember now. For some imaginary future that never came. This is a trap. This is a lie we all believe. We think life is about building towards something, about achievement, about progress, about reaching some destination where happiness finally awaits. But life isn't a destination. Life is a walk. And I missed the walk because I was too busy looking at the map. Here's what no one told me when I was young. The ordinary moments are the whole point, not the wedding. But the quiet morning after, when you wake up next to someone who chose you, not the promotion, but the lunch break where your colleague made you laugh until you snorted coffee, not the vacation, but the drive there, with the windows down and your kids singing off-key in the backseat. Those are the moments. Those are the only moments. And you will not understand this until you've lost them, until they exist only as memories, until you'd sell your soul for one more boring Tuesday with the people who are now gone forever. I had a friend named Walter. We met in 1968. Young men, full of fire and ambition and certainty about everything. We were going to conquer the world together. Walter was the funniest man I ever knew. He had this laugh, this ridiculous, honking laugh that made everyone in the room crack up whether they wanted to or not. He'd call me at odd hours just to tell me a joke he'd heard, and I'd cut him short. "Walt, I'm busy. Walt, it's late. Walt, can this wait?" Always rushing. Always too important for a 2-minute conversation with my best friend. He died in 2019. Heart attack, quick and quiet. And at his funeral, I realized something that nearly destroyed me. I couldn't remember the last real conversation we had. Not the last time I saw him. I remembered that. But the last time I actually listened to him, the last time I was fully present, not checking my watch, not thinking about the next thing, I couldn't find it. It was buried somewhere in the blur of decades, lost in the noise of a life, spent perpetually distracted. And standing at his grave, I understood a terrible truth. Walter didn't die in 2019. For me, he had been dying for years. Every time I rushed him off the phone, every time I declined an invitation, every time I chose the urgent over the important, I was letting him go long before his heart stopped. And he wasn't the only one. My father died thinking I was too busy for him. My mother died waiting for a visit I kept postponing. My wife died wondering why I never danced with her anymore. And now I sit in this empty house, surrounded by all the things I worked so hard to accumulate, and I realize I was rich in stuff, poor in presents. I owned everything and cherished nothing. This is the first hard truth I need to tell you, but it's not the hardest one, because what I discovered next, what old age reveals when you sit long enough in silence, goes even deeper. It's about the lies we tell ourselves, the ones so deeply embedded that we don't even recognize them as lies. And the biggest lie, the one that cost me more than all the others combined, I believed it for 60 years before I saw it for what it was. And if you believe it too, which you probably do, it's stealing your life right now, this very second. Let me tell you about the lie. The lie is this: you are not enough. Right now, as you are, reading these words, breathing that breath, you believe somewhere deep in your bones that you are not enough, not successful enough, not attractive enough, not smart enough, not rich enough, not accomplished enough to deserve love, not worthy enough to just be. I believed this lie for 60 years, and it nearly destroyed everything good in my life. When I was young, I thought I had to earn my place in the world, that existence itself wasn't enough, that I needed to justify my space on this planet through achievement. So I worked. God, how I worked. 14-hour days. Weekends at the office. Vacations I cut short because something important came up. I was always running, always striving, always trying to become the person I thought I needed to be. But here's the thing about running toward a finish line that doesn't exist. You never arrive. There's always another goal, another milestone, another achievement that promises fulfillment, but delivers only exhaustion and hunger for more. I got the promotions. I got the corner office. I got the salary that would have made my immigrant father weep with pride. And I was empty, not empty like sad, empty like hollow. Like something essential had been scooped out of me and replaced with ambition that felt increasingly meaningless. But I couldn't stop, because stopping meant sitting still. And sitting still meant facing myself. And facing myself meant confronting the terrifying question I've been running from since childhood. What if I'm not actually special? What if I'm just ordinary? What if all this striving is just a desperate attempt to prove that I matter to a universe that doesn't care either way? That question haunted me. It drove me harder. It made me sacrifice things I can never get back. And it was based on a lie. Because here's what I learned at 80, what I learned too late. Sitting alone in this quiet house. Ordinary is not the opposite of meaningful. Ordinary is where all the meaning lives. The most meaningful moments of my life were excruciatingly ordinary. They weren't award ceremonies or business deals or moments of triumph. They were my son falling asleep on my chest when he was 3 months old, his tiny heartbeat against mine, his breath smelling like milk and innocence, my wife laughing at her own joke, something stupid about a duck, until tears streamed down her face, and I couldn't help but join her, my father, near the end, holding my hand and saying nothing, just holding it. 2 men who'd never been good at words, finally understanding that words weren't necessary. Those moments, those ordinary, unmemorable, forgettable moments, they were everything. And I nearly missed them all because I was too busy trying to become somebody instead of simply being somebody. Here's the brutal truth. You don't have to earn your place in this world. You exist. That is enough. The people who truly love you, who really love you, don't love you because of what you've accomplished. They love you because you're you. And if you died tomorrow with nothing on your resume, they would grieve just the same. But I didn't believe that. I thought love was conditional. I thought I had to keep proving myself, keep earning my worth, keep building a case for why anyone should care about me. So I performed. My whole life was a performance. At work, I performed competence. At home, I performed strength. With my children, I performed wisdom I didn't actually have. With my wife, I performed stability while falling apart inside. I was so busy being the person I thought everyone needed me to be that I forgot to be the person I actually was. And the tragedy, the real heartbreaking tragedy, the person I actually was might have been loved even more. My wife didn't need a provider. She needed a partner. Someone who would cry with her. Someone who would admit when he was scared. Someone who would let her see behind the mask. But I never let her. I was too afraid. Too afraid that if she saw the real me, the confused, insecure, lost me, she would leave. That she would finally see through performance and realize she'd married a fraud. So I kept the walls up. I kept performing. I kept her at arm's length, even when she was lying next to me. She died without ever fully knowing me. And I died a little bit that day, too, because I realized what I had done. I had been given a person who wanted to love all of me, the messy, broken, imperfect all of me, and I had only let her love the curated version, the highlight reel, the performance. I cheated her. I cheated myself. And I did it because of a lie I'd carried since childhood. A lie that whispered I wasn't enough. That lie came from somewhere. Lies always do. They're not born in a vacuum. And if I'm going to tell you the full truth, if I'm going to confess everything, I need to take you back. Back to a night in 1953. Back to my father's hands and my mother's tears. Back to the moment the lie was planted so deep in my soul that I wouldn't find it for another 6 decades. What happened that night shaped everything. Every relationship, every decision, every mask I ever wore. And I've never told anyone about it. Until now. It was February, cold enough that the windows had frost on the inside. I was 8 years old. My father worked at a factory, 12-hour shifts, 6 days a week, hands like leather, back bent from labor that paid almost nothing. He was a proud man, silent, hard in the way men of that generation were taught to be hard. He never said, "I love you," not once in my entire childhood. I used to think it was because he didn't feel it. Now I know he just didn't have the words. Love, for him, was showing up, working himself to death, putting food on a table even when his body screamed for rest. But I didn't understand that at 8. At 8, I just wanted him to see me. That February night, I'd done something I was proud of, a drawing, a picture of our house with smoke coming from the chimney, and all 4 of us standing in front. Me, my sister, my mother, my father, I'd worked on for days. Colored it carefully with the 3 crayons I had that weren't broken. I waited by the door for him to come home. When he walked in, exhausted, snow still melting on his shoulders, I ran to him with the drawing extended like an offering. "Papa, look, I made this for you." He glanced at it, just glanced. Then he walked past me to the kitchen, sat down heavily at the table, and said to my mother, "Is dinner ready?" That was it. No acknowledgement, no praise, no "that's nice" or "good job," or even a grunt of recognition. Just nothing. I stood there holding that drawing, and something inside me cracked. Not broke. Cracked. A tiny fracture that would spider web through the next 7 decades of my life. My mother saw my face. She came over, knelt down, told me the drawing was beautiful, told me Papa was just tired, told me he loved me even if he didn't say it. But the damage was done. In that moment, standing in that cold kitchen, I made a decision that I didn't even know I was making. I decided I would become someone my father couldn't ignore. I would achieve so much, accomplish so much, become so undeniably impressive that he would have no choice but to see me, to acknowledge me, to finally say the words I was starving to hear. That decision shaped everything. Every grade I chased, every promotion I clawed for, every late night at the office, every sacrifice of time with my own children. I was still that 8-year-old boy, still holding out a drawing, still waiting for my father to look. He died in 1987, lung cancer. The factory had given him more than a paycheck. It had filled his lungs with poison that killed him at 67. I flew home, sat by his bed in the hospital, watched him shrink into someone I barely recognized. And on his last night, when he could barely speak, I leaned in close. I needed to know. "Papa," I whispered, "are you proud of me?" He looked at me with those fading eyes, reached up with a hand that used to feel like iron but now felt like paper, and he said, "I was always proud of you. Always. Not because of what I'd become, not because of the degrees or the career or the salary. Always. From the beginning, before I'd accomplished anything. When I was just a boy with a crayon drawing and hope in his eyes, he was always proud of me, and he'd never said it. He died 3 hours later, and I sat in that hospital room as the sun came up, and I wept, not just for him, not just for his death. I wept for the decades I'd wasted trying to earn something that was already mine. I wept for the version of myself I could have been if I had known the truth. I wept for my own children. Children I kept at arm's length because I was so busy chasing approval from a ghost. The lie had been planted by silence. My father's inability to express love had taught me that love must be earned, that I wasn't enough as I was, that I needed to become more before I deserved to be seen. But he loved me the whole time. He just didn't know how to say it, and I didn't know how to hear it. 2 generations of men drowning in unexpressed love, missing each other completely. Here's what I need you to understand. The lies we carry usually aren't lies we chose. They're lies that were planted in us by people who were also carrying lies. People who were doing their best with their own wounds and limitations. My father wasn't cruel. He was broken in his own way, shaped by his own silent father, trapped in a cycle he didn't even know existed. And I inherited that cycle. I passed it to my own son, a son who, even now, struggles to believe he's enough, a son who works too hard and loves too cautiously, a son who is still waiting for approval he shouldn't need, because I did to him what was done to me, not out of malice, out of blindness. And this is why I'm telling you this now, because the cycle can break, but only if someone has the courage to name it, to drag it into the light, to say, this lie stops with me. I'm 80 years old, too late to undo the damage I've done, but not too late to name it, to confess it, to hope that someone younger hears this and wakes up before they've wasted as many years as I did. The lie is that you're not enough. The truth is that you always were. But knowing that truth and living it are 2 different things. And living it requires something that terrified me for most of my life. Something I avoided at all costs. Something that, when I finally surrendered to it, changed everything. Let me tell you what it is. Vulnerability. That's the word that terrified me for 60 years. To be vulnerable meant to be weak, to be exposed, to hand someone a weapon and trust them not to use it against you. Everything in my upbringing taught me to avoid it. Men don't cry. Men don't admit fear. Men don't need help. Men handle things. Men stay strong. So I built walls, thick, impenetrable walls around every soft part of myself. And I thought those walls were protecting me. I was wrong. They were imprisoning me. Here's what I didn't understand until it was almost too late. Walls don't just keep pain out. They keep love out too. Every time I refused to show weakness, I was refusing to let someone truly know me. Every time I pretended to be fine when I was breaking, I was pushing away the very people who wanted to help me carry the weight. I thought strength meant standing alone. But standing alone isn't strength. It's just loneliness with better marketing. My wife tried to break through those walls for 40 years. She'd ask me what I was feeling. I'd say, fine. She'd notice I was struggling. I'd say, I'm handling it. She'd reach for my hand in the dark when she knew I was awake, worried, afraid. And I'd pretend to be asleep. 40 years of pretending. 40 years of shutting out the one person who wanted nothing more than to know me, the real me, the scared me, the broken me, and she loved me anyway. She loved me through my walls, through my silence, through my stubborn refusal to let her in. But she never got to love the parts one was hiding, because I never showed them to her. I remember one night, this was maybe 2005, I came home from work devastated. We'd lost a major account. My job was in jeopardy. I felt like a failure, like everything I had built was crumbling. My wife was in the kitchen. She looked at my face and immediately knew something was wrong. "What happened?" she asked. And I had a choice. I could let her in. I could sit down, take her hands, and tell her I was terrified, that I didn't know what to do, that I needed her. Or I could do what I'd always done. "Nothing," I said. "Long day. I'm going to take a shower." I chose the wall. She nodded, but I saw something in her eyes that I pretended not to see. A flicker of resignation, a small light dimming. She was getting tired of knocking on a door that never opened, and I was too blind to realize that every time I shut her out, I was teaching her to stop trying. The shower ran hot that night. I stood under the water and let myself fall apart where no one could see. Alone, always alone. Even with someone who loved me sleeping in the next room. This is what walls do. They make you feel safe while slowly suffocating you. They protect you from pain while starving you of connection. And connection, real, vulnerable, terrifying connection, is the only thing that actually saves us. I learned this too late, but I learned it. It happened after my wife got sick. Cancer, the word that changes everything. Suddenly, all the things that seemed so important, work, reputation, money, became meaningless noise. The only thing that mattered was her. And the time we had left, the doctors gave her 6 months. She fought for 18. 18 months of hospitals and treatments and hope and despair. 18 months of watching the strongest person I knew grow weaker. 18 months of knowing the end was coming and being powerless to stop it. And somewhere in those 18 months, my walls finally crumbled. I didn't choose for it to happen. I didn't wake up one day and decide to be vulnerable. I just broke. The weight was too heavy. The fear was too big. The impending loss was too real to pretend anymore. One night, sitting beside her hospital bed, I started to cry. Not quiet, dignified tears. Ugly, shaking sobs. The kind I hadn't allowed myself since childhood. And through my tears, I said the words I'd never been able to say. "I'm scared. I'm so scared. I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to lose you. I'm not strong enough." She reached over, this woman who could barely lift her arm, who was fighting a war inside her own body, and she touched my face, and she smiled. "Finally," she whispered, "there you are. There you are." 3 words that destroyed me and rebuilt me at the same time. She'd been waiting decades for me to show up, for the real me to step out from behind the walls, for the scared little boy to finally trust someone enough to be seen. And I'd made her wait until she was dying. The months that followed were different. I stopped pretending. I stopped performing. I told her everything, every fear, every regret, every secret I'd carried alone for too long. And she did the same. We talked more in those final months than we had in the previous 10 years combined. We laughed. We cried. We said things that should have been said decades earlier. It was devastating. And it was the most connected I'd ever felt in my entire life. When she died, I was holding her hand. And unlike all those years of pretending, I let myself feel it. All of it. The grief, the gratitude, the unbearable weight of losing someone who knew me. Finally, actually knew me. I didn't hide from the pain. And somehow, that made it bearable. Because pain shared as pain halved. And I'd spent a lifetime trying to carry everything alone when there were people waiting to help me. This is what vulnerability gives you. Not weakness. Not exposure. Connection. The thing every human being is starving for, but too afraid to seek. And if you're listening to this and you have walls too, walls you built to protect yourself, walls that feel necessary, I need to tell you something. Those walls aren't saving you. They're stealing from you. They're stealing the very thing that makes life worth living. But here's what I've also learned. Vulnerability doesn't mean bleeding on everyone. It doesn't mean trusting people who haven't earned it. It doesn't mean having no boundaries. It means choosing carefully, intentionally, to let the right people see you. All of you, even the parts you've been hiding from yourself. My wife taught me that in her final months, when it was almost too late. But almost means there was still time. And there might still be time for you too. That's not the end of what I need to tell you, though, because vulnerability opened a door. And what I found on the other side of that door, it changed how I understand everything. Life, death, what happens after. What I'm about to tell you next, I've never said out loud. Not to my children, not to my friends, not to anyone. But I'm 80 years old, and some truths are too important to take to the grave. 3 weeks after my wife died, something happened that I cannot explain. I've thought about it every day since. Turned it over in my mind. Tried to rationalize it. Tried to dismiss it as grief playing tricks on me. But I can't, because it was real. As real as the chair I'm sitting in right now. As real as the words I'm speaking to you. It was around 3 a.m., that dead hour when the world goes completely silent and time seems to stop. I've been having trouble sleeping since she passed, lying awake in our bed, reaching for her side, finding only cold sheets. That night, I finally drifted off, and I dreamed, but it wasn't like any dream I'd ever had. I was standing in a field, golden wheat stretching in every direction, warm sunlight on my face, a soft wind carrying a scent I hadn't smelled in decades, my mother's perfume mixed with fresh bread and something else, something I couldn't name but recognized in my bones. And then I saw her, my wife, not sick, not frail, not the version of her that cancer had hollowed out in those final months. Young, radiant, wearing a blue dress I remember from our honeymoon in 1971. She was walking toward me, and she was smiling. That smile, the one that made me fall in love with her 53 years ago, the one I thought I'd never see again. I tried to run to her, but my legs wouldn't move. I tried to speak, but no sound came out. She stopped a few feet away, close enough that I could see the light in her eyes, close enough that I could almost feel her warmth. And then she spoke, not with her mouth. The words appeared in my mind, as clear as if she'd whispered them directly into my soul. "It's okay," she said. "I'm okay, and you're going to be okay too." I wanted to grab her, hold her, never let go. But I knew, somehow I knew that I couldn't, that she was showing me something, giving me something, but she couldn't stay. "Wait," I begged, though I'm not sure if I spoke or just thought it. "Wait, don't go. I have so much to tell you. I have so many things I never said. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for all of it." She shook her head gently. "You already told me, in those last months. You already said everything that mattered." And then she did something I'll never forget. She placed her hand over my heart. I felt it. I felt her hand, warm and real and solid. "I'm here," she said. "I never left. And I never will." I woke up gasping. My hand was pressed against my own chest. My face was wet with tears. I'd been crying in my sleep. And for a moment, just one fleeting miraculous moment, I smelled her. Not memory, not imagination. Her actual scent, lavender and vanilla, the lotion she'd used for 40 years. It was in the room with me. And then it was gone. Now, I know what you might be thinking. Grief does strange things. The mind creates what the heart desperately needs. Dreams are just neurons firing randomly, constructing meaning from chaos. Maybe that's all it was. But I've lived 80 years. I've had thousands of dreams. I know the difference between a dream and something else. That night was something else. And it changed me. Not because I suddenly believed in heaven or angels or any specific religious framework, but because I realized something that had never occurred to me before. We don't actually know what happens. We pretend we do. Scientists say there's nothing. Religious leaders say there's everything. Everyone has an answer. But the truth is, nobody knows. Nobody has come back from the end with a verified report. Nobody has the full picture. And in that uncertainty, I found something unexpected. Hope, not blind faith, not wishful thinking, just the acknowledgement that reality might be bigger than I ever imagined. I started thinking about all the things we once thought were impossible. The earth being round, germs causing disease, radio waves carrying sound invisibly through the air. Every generation is certain they understand the universe, and every generation is eventually proven wrong. What if consciousness is the same? What if the thing that makes us us, the awareness, the love, the memories, doesn't just vanish when the body stops working? I don't know. I can't prove anything. But after that dream, if it was a dream, I stopped being afraid of death. Not because I know what comes next, but because I'm willing to find out. That shift changed how I spend my remaining days. Before that night, I was waiting to die, going through the motions, counting down the clock until I could be with my wife again. After that night, I started living again because she told me I was going to be okay, and I wanted to prove her right. I started calling my children more, not out of obligation, but because I wanted to hear their voices. I started sitting on this porch and actually watching the sunsets instead of staring through them. I started writing letters to people I'd lost, letters I'll never read, but that I needed to write. I started cherishing the waiting, because maybe the waiting is part of it. Maybe these final years aren't a sentence to be served, but a gift to be opened. Maybe the silence of this house isn't emptiness. Maybe it's preparation. My wife asked me once, years ago, what I thought happened after we died. I gave her some dismissive answer. Changed the subject. I was uncomfortable with questions that didn't have concrete answers. Now I wish I'd talked to her about it for hours. I wish I'd asked her what she believed, what she hoped for, what she feared. Another conversation I traded for silence. Another regret to carry. But here's what I've decided. Sitting alone with these questions, it doesn't matter what's waiting on the other side. What matters is how you walk toward it. Do you walk with fear? With bitterness? With a heart full of unfinished business? Or do you walk with gratitude? With peace? With the knowledge that you loved fully and held nothing back? I wasted too many years walking with fear. These days, I'm practicing a different walk. And that practice has taught me something else. Something about forgiveness. Something I never expected to learn at 80. Something that finally set me free from a weight I've been carrying for longer than most of you have been alive. This is the part that hurts the most to tell. But I promise you the truth. All of it. I need to tell you about my brother. His name was Joseph. Joey, we called him. 3 years younger than me. Same eyes as our mother. Same stubborn jaw as our father. He died in 1978. And for 45 years, I believed it was my fault. We were close as children, the way brothers are when they share a small room and hand-me-down clothes, and a father who didn't know how to love out loud. Joey was different from me. Softer, more sensitive. The kind of boy who cried at movies and collected injured birds and wanted to talk about feelings in an era when boys weren't allowed to have them. Our father didn't understand him. I didn't protect him the way I should have. When we grew up, we grew apart. Different paths, different cities, different lives. Joey struggled. He drank too much, couldn't hold a job, went through relationships like water through a sieve. Something was broken in him. Something I later understood was depression, though we didn't have that word back then. We just called it weakness. I called it weakness. By our 30s, we barely spoke. I was too busy building my career, my family, my walls. He was an inconvenience, a reminder of where I came from, a mess I didn't have time to clean up. He called me one night in October 1978. I remember it was late. I was tired. I had an early meeting the next morning. The phone rang, and I almost didn't answer. But I did. His voice was strange, thin, like he was speaking from very far away. "Hey," he said, "I just wanted to hear your voice." I was annoyed. That's the truth. That's what I have to live with. I was annoyed that he was calling late, annoyed that he sounded drunk, annoyed that he needed something from me when I had nothing to give. "It's late, Joey. Can this wait?" There was a pause, a long pause. "Yeah," he said finally. "Yeah, it can wait." And then, "I love you. You know that, right? I've always looked up to you." Something flickered in me. A warning. A small voice saying, "Pay attention." But I was tired. So tired. "I love you too," I said. The words were automatic. Empty. "Get some sleep, Joey. We'll talk this weekend." "Sure," he said. "This weekend." He hung up. That was the last time I heard his voice. They found him the next morning. Pills. A whole bottle. And a note that said only, "I'm sorry. I wasn't strong enough." I didn't go to work that day. I didn't go anywhere for weeks. Because I knew what that call was. I knew he was saying goodbye. I knew he needed me to hear him. Really hear him. And I'd been too tired, too busy, too wrapped up in my own life to listen. If I had just asked one question. Just one. "Joey, are you okay? Joey, what's going on? Joey, do you need me to come over?" If I had just stayed on the phone 5 more minutes. If I had just heard the goodbye hiding in his voice. Maybe he'd still be alive. Maybe I could have saved him. That maybe became a prison. I locked myself inside it for 45 years. Carried the weight of his death on my shoulders. Let it poison every good thing in my life. I never told anyone the full story. Not my wife. Not my children. Not a therapist or priest or friend. I just carried it. Alone. The way I carried everything. And the weight nearly killed me. There were nights, dark nights, whiskey-soaked nights, when I understood why Joey did what he did. When the weight felt so heavy that putting it down forever seemed like the only option. I never tried. But I understood. And that understanding terrified me. So I buried it deeper. Worked harder. Built higher walls. But the thing about buried pain is this. It doesn't decompose. It just waits. It waited until I was 75 years old. It waited until my wife was dying and my walls were crumbling and I couldn't run anymore. And then it came roaring up from the depths and demanded to be seen. I was sitting in the hospital, alone, while my wife slept, 3 in the morning again. That dead hour. And suddenly I was sobbing. Not for my wife. Not for her sickness. For Joey. For the brother I'd failed. For the phone call I should have lengthened. For the 45 years of guilt I'd never allowed myself to fully feel. It all came out. Decades of frozen grief, finally thawing. And in that moment I heard something. Not audibly. Not like a voice in a room. But clearly. As clearly as my wife's voice in that dream. It said, "Let it go." 3 words. Let it go. Not "you're forgiven." Not "it wasn't your fault." Not any of the things I thought I needed to hear. Just let it go. And I understood. Forgiveness isn't about deserving to be free. It isn't about earning release. It isn't about analyzing whether you were truly guilty or just unfortunate. Forgiveness is a choice. A brutal, terrifying, irrational choice to put down a weight you have every right to keep carrying. I didn't save Joey. That's true. I could have listened better. That's also true. But I didn't put those pills in his hand. I didn't create the darkness that consumed him. I didn't break him. He was drowning in a sea I couldn't see. And yes, maybe I could have thrown a rope. Maybe I could have jumped in after him. But maybe I couldn't have. Maybe the undertow was too strong. Maybe some people are fighting battles so deep and so dark that no phone call, no matter how long, could have won the war. I'll never know. And that uncertainty, that maybe, is what I finally learned to live with, not by resolving it, by releasing it. I sat in that hospital room, and I said the words out loud. I forgive myself. They felt false at first. Hollow, like a lie I was trying to make true. But I said them again. I forgive myself. And again, and again, and somewhere around 100th time, something shifted. The weight didn't disappear, but it got lighter, light enough to carry, light enough to live with. I'm 80 years old. I've done things I regret. I've failed people who needed me. I've made mistakes that can never be undone. And I've learned to forgive myself anyway. Not because I deserve it, but because carrying unforgiveness was killing me faster than any disease. And I wasn't ready to die. Not yet. Not before I'd learned to live. This brings me to the hardest truth. The one I've been circling around this whole time. The one that everything else has been building toward. Are you ready to hear it? Because this is the thing no one tells you. The thing you have to discover for yourself. The thing that changes everything. Here's the hardest truth I know. You're going to die. I know you know this. Intellectually, abstractly, the way you know the sun is a star or the ocean is deep. But you don't really know it. Not yet. Not the way I know it now. When you're young, death is a concept. A distant shore you can't quite see. Something that happens to other people. Old people, sick people, unlucky people. Not you. Never you. You live like you have forever. You waste time like it's renewable. You postpone joy like there's an infinite supply waiting in some warehouse you'll access later. I did this for decades. I knew I would die someday. But someday felt so far away that it might as well have been never. And then one morning, I looked in the mirror and saw an old man staring back. And I realized someday is almost here. The distance that once seemed infinite had collapsed. The shore I couldn't see was now visible on the horizon. Close. Getting closer every day. That realization did something to me. It woke me up. Not gently. Not kindly. It grabbed me by the throat and shook me until my teeth rattled. Because I understood, finally, truly understood, that I was running out of time. Not theoretically. Not philosophically. Actually, the breaths I have left could be counted. The sunrises I'll witness have a number. The conversations, the meals, the moments of laughter, they are finite. They are ending. One by one, they are being spent and they will not be replenished. This is terrifying, but it is also the most important truth I have ever learned. Because once you really know you're going to die, once you feel in your bones instead of just thinking it in your head, everything changes. The petty arguments stop mattering. The grudges feel ridiculous. The things you've been putting off become urgent. The people you've been taking for granted become precious. Death is not the enemy. Forgetting about death is the enemy. When you forget you're going to die, you treat life carelessly. You spend your days like a drunk spends money, recklessly, thoughtlessly, assuming there's always more where that came from. But when you remember, really remember, you become careful, intentional. You stop wasting your one wild and precious life on things that don't matter. I wish someone had shaken me awake at 30, at 40, at 50. I wish someone had grabbed my face, looked me in the eyes, and said, "You are dying, right now. Every second that passes is a second you will never get back. Stop acting like you have forever. You don't. None of us do. Maybe I wouldn't have listened. Probably I wouldn't have. The young rarely listen to the old. They think we're being dramatic, morbid, pessimistic. But we're not. We're just telling the truth. And the truth is this. Your life is a candle burning at both ends. You cannot see how much wax is left. You cannot add more. You can only choose how brightly to burn while you still have flame. I spent too much of my candle on darkness, on worry, on fear, on anger, on resentment, on work that didn't fulfill me, on arguments that didn't matter, on proving things to people who didn't care. I let my flame flicker when it should have blazed. And now, with so little wax remaining, I finally understand what the fire was for. It wasn't for impressing anyone. It wasn't for accumulating things. It wasn't for being right or successful or important. It was for warmth, for giving warmth to others, for receiving warmth in return, for creating tiny circles of light in a cold, dark universe. That's it. That's the whole point. Everything else is distraction. I look at young people now, rushing to work, staring at phones, arguing about politics, chasing promotions, and I want to grab them. I want to shake them the way I wish someone had shaken me. Look up, I want to scream. Look around. The people beside you won't be there forever. This moment won't come again. You are spending your only life on things that will turn to dust. Stop, please, stop. But I don't, because I know they can't hear it yet. You have to get close enough to the edge to see over it. You have to feel the ground crumbling beneath your feet. Only then do you understand what you're standing on. I'm standing on the edge now, close enough to see the darkness, close enough to feel the wind from whatever lies beyond. And from here, the view is strangely beautiful, because everything that remains is what actually matters. The noise has been stripped away. The nonsense has been burned off. What's left is simple, pure, true love. That's what's left. Not romantic love, though that's part of it. Not familial love, though that's part of it too. Something bigger, a love for existence itself, for the sheer improbability of being here at all, for the miracle of consciousness in an unconscious universe, for the gift of having been given a front row seat to this strange, painful, beautiful show. I love the way morning light falls through my window. I love the sound of rain on the roof. I love the smell of coffee, even bad coffee, because it means I'm alive to smell it. I love the faces in old photographs, even the ones that make me cry. I love the fact that I got to be here, that I got to experience any of this, that for a brief flicker in the eternal darkness, I was allowed to feel the warmth of the sun on my face. This is what death teaches you, not to fear the ending, but to love the middle, not to mourn what's coming, but to celebrate what already was. When I die, and it will be soon now, one way or another, I will not go into that darkness with clenched fists. I will go with open hands, hands that held babies and lovers and the frail fingers of dying friends, hands that built things and broke things and learned eventually to let go. I will go with a heart full of gratitude for every sunrise I witnessed, for every person who loved me despite my walls, for every moment of beauty I was present enough to notice. But before I go, I have one more thing to tell you, something I discovered only in these final years, something about living, truly living, in the time that remains, whether that's 50 years or 5 days, because knowing you're going to die isn't enough. You have to know how to live with that knowledge. And that requires one final, terrifying act of courage. The most important thing I've ever done. The most important thing I've ever done is this. I stopped waiting. That's it. That's the secret that took me 80 years to learn. I stopped waiting for permission. Stopped waiting for the right moment. Stopped waiting for circumstances to align. Stopped waiting for someone to tell me I was ready. I just started living. You have no idea how radical this is. Most people spend their entire lives in a waiting room, waiting for life to begin, waiting for happiness to arrive, waiting for the thing that will finally make everything okay. They wait in line for a door that never opens, and then they die in that line, still waiting. I was one of them. For decades, I told myself stories about why I couldn't live fully yet. I can't travel now. I have to save for retirement. I can't pursue that passion. I have responsibilities. I can't tell her how I feel. What if she rejects me? I can't forgive him. He hasn't apologized. I can't slow down. There's too much to do. Can't. A lifetime of can'ts. And underneath every single one of them was the same lie. Later. I'll live later. But later never comes. There is no later. There's only now. This moment. This breath. This heartbeat, now, and then another now, and another, until suddenly there are no more nows left. I understood this intellectually for years, read it in books, heard it in sermons, nodded along when wise people said it, But I didn't live it. Not until I ran out of laters. Not until the doctor looked at me and said words that changed everything. It was 3 years ago. Routine checkup. I felt fine, but the blood work came back wrong. Then the scans came back worse. We need to talk about your options, he said. And in that moment, sitting in that sterile office with its bad lighting and generic art, I felt time collapse. All the laters I'd been hoarding, they evaporated, gone. The trips I was going to take someday, the people I was going to reconnect with when things calmed down, the words I was going to say eventually. Suddenly, there was no someday, no when things calmed down, no eventually. There was only now, and now was almost over. I drove home in a daze, sat in my driveway for an hour, and then something broke open in me. Not grief, not fear, something else. Urgency, a desperate, burning need to stop wasting whatever time I had left. I went inside and wrote letters. Letters to my children telling them things I'd never said. Letters to old friends I'd lost touch with. Letters to people I'd wronged, asking for forgiveness. Letters to people who'd wronged me, offering it. I wrote until my hand cramped. I made phone calls. I called my son and told him I was proud of him, not for what he'd achieved, but for who he was. He was silent for a long moment. Then his voice cracked. "Dad, are you okay?" "I'm more okay than I've ever been," I said. "I just realized I've been waiting too long to tell you things that matter." We talked for 3 hours that night. 3 hours. I learned things about my own son I'd never known. His fears, his dreams, the ways he'd felt unseen by me, the ways he wanted to be closer but didn't know how. 50 years of silence, broken in one phone call, because I finally stopped waiting. The next day, I booked a flight, not to anywhere exotic, just to visit my daughter and her kids, something I'd been postponing for months. Work is busy, I told myself. The flights are expensive, I told myself. Lies, all lies, excuses to stay comfortable, to keep waiting. But I wasn't waiting anymore. I showed up at her door unannounced. She burst into tears. "Dad, what are you doing here?" "I came to see you," I said. "That's all. I just came to see you." We spent a week together. I played with my grandchildren. Really played. On the floor on my bad knees, making a fool of myself. I watched my daughter cook dinner and told her she reminded me of her mother. She cried again. This time, so did I. 1 week, 7 days. More connection than I'd experienced in the previous 7 years. Because I stopped waiting. The diagnosis, it turned out, was treatable. I'm still here. The doctors say I might have a few more years. But I don't count on it. I don't count on anything anymore. I treat every day like it might be my last. Not with panic, but with intention. I say what needs to be said. I do what needs to be done. I love without reservation. I forgive without condition. I show up, fully, every single day. This is what the shadow of death taught me. Life is not a dress rehearsal. There is no practice run. This is it, right now, the real thing. And you can keep waiting in the wings, memorizing your lines, preparing for a performance that never comes. Or you can walk onto the stage. Now, today, before the curtain falls. Most people choose to wait. They tell themselves they have time. They tell themselves they'll get to it later. They tell themselves the conditions aren't right yet. And then they run out of runway. The plane never takes off. I'm begging you, whoever you are, whatever age you are, don't wait. Don't wait to tell them you love them. Don't wait to chase the thing that makes you feel alive. Don't wait to forgive. Don't wait to heal. Don't wait to live. Because waiting is just a slow way of dying. And you were made for so much more than that. I have one final thing to share with you. One final lesson from the far side of 80 years. It's about what happens when you stop waiting. What you find on the other side. What becomes possible when you finally, fully show up for your own life. It's the most beautiful thing I've ever discovered. And I almost missed it entirely. When you stop waiting, something miraculous happens. You find yourself. Not the version of you that everyone else wants. Not the mask you've been wearing for decades. Not the performer, the achiever, the people pleaser. The real you, the one who's been buried under layers of expectations and fears and should-haves. The one you abandoned somewhere along the way and forgot existed. I met myself for the first time at 77 years old. That's how long it took. 77 years of performing, pretending, of being who I thought I needed to be instead of who I actually was. And then in the silence of this empty house, with death knocking softly at the door, I finally sat still long enough to ask, who am I? Not who was I to my parents. Not who was I to my wife or my children or my colleagues. Who am I when no one is watching? Who am I when there's no one left to impress? The answer terrified me at first, because I didn't know. 80 years on this planet, and I couldn't answer the most basic question of human existence. I had defined myself by my roles for so long that when the roles fell away, I felt like nothing, empty, invisible, a ghost haunting my own life. But I kept sitting, kept asking, kept waiting in the silence for an answer that seemed like it would never come. And then, slowly it did, not as a thunderbolt, not as a revelation, as a whisper, a quiet voice I've been drowning out for 7 decades. It said, I'm still here, the boy who used to catch fireflies in mason jars, the one who believed in magic, the one who cried at beautiful things and laughed too loud and loved without holding back. He was still in there, buried, bruised, almost forgotten, but alive. And in those final years, these final years, I've been getting to know him again. I've learned that I love thunderstorms, really love them, not just as background noise, but as something to witness fully. I sit on this porch and watch the lightning crack the sky and feel something ancient stir in my chest. I've learned that I love to sing. Terribly, off-key, but with my whole heart. I sing to myself in this empty house, and the walls don't judge. I've learned that I'm funny, actually funny, not in the performative way I used to be at parties, but in a quiet, absurd way that makes me laugh at my own thoughts at 2 a.m. I've learned that I'm brave, braver than I ever gave myself credit for. To have survived what I survived, the losses, the failures, the dark nights, and still be here, still be open, still be willing to feel. That's courage. I never saw it before. I've learned that I am, despite everything, still capable of wonder. Last week, I watched a spider build a web outside my window for an hour. Just watched. The precision of it, the patience, the artistry of something so small creating something so intricate. And I wept, not from sadness, from awe, that I got to see it, that I was present enough to notice that there's still so much beauty in this world, even now, even here, even at the end. This is what remains when you stop running, when you stop performing, when you stop waiting. Yourself, and the stunning realization that yourself was always enough. I spent my whole life trying to become something. Successful, important, respected, loved. I thought I had to earn my place in the universe. But the universe wasn't keeping score. The universe just wanted me to show up, as myself. That's all. That's everything. If I could give you one gift, one thing to carry with you when you leave this porch and return to your life, it would be this. You don't have to become anything. You just have to remember who you already are. Underneath the job and the relationships and the bank account and the expectations. Underneath the stories you've been told about who you should be. Underneath the wounds and the walls and the masks you've worn so long you forgot they were masks. There is someone in there. Someone true. Someone whole. Someone worthy of love. Not because of what they've done, but because they exist. Find that person before it's too late. Before the silence becomes permanent. Before the house empties out and the phone stops ringing. Find them now. I'm 80 years old. I'm sitting on this porch, watching the light change on the trees, feeling the weight of a life fully lived and a life half wasted, all at once. I have regrets. God, I have regrets. But I also have something I didn't have for most of my life. Peace. Not the peace of having figured everything out. The peace of no longer needing to. The peace of knowing that whatever comes next, tomorrow, next month, the darkness beyond, I finally showed up for my own life. I finally stopped waiting. I finally found what remains. And what remains is this: love given and received, moments noticed and cherished, a self-discovered and embraced, gratitude, fierce, hard-taking gratitude for the sheer improbability of having been here at all. That's it. That's everything. That's enough. If you made it this far with me, I want to thank you for sitting on this porch, for listening to an old man ramble about things he wishes he'd understood sooner, for being here, wherever you are, in whatever chapter of life you're living. The fact that you're still listening tells me something important. You're searching for meaning, for truth, for something that matters in a world that often feels meaningless. I hope you found something here, even a fragment, even a whisper, something to carry with you into the days ahead. Now I have one final request, not for me, for yourself. Before you move on to the next video, the next task, the next distraction, stop just for a moment. Take a breath. Look around at wherever you are. Feel your heart beating in your chest. You're alive, right now, this moment. And this moment will never come again. So, what are you going to do with it? Who are you going to love? What are you going to say? How are you going to show up for this one wild and precious life? The clock is ticking. It always has been. But now you know. And knowing changes everything. I'll be here on this porch a little longer, watching the light fade, listening to the birds, waiting not for something to happen, but just to see what comes next. If this spoke to you, share it with someone you love, someone who might need to hear it, someone who might be waiting too long, the way I did. Subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next. And please leave a comment. Tell me, what are you done waiting for? What are you finally going to do? I read every single one. It makes this quiet house feel a little more alive. Thank you for being here. Now go live while you still can.